Yes, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How you
Oh shit, the
doing?
camera's on.
Oh, yeah, no. Stop just doing your I'm on the toilet face.
I'm always on the toilet.
He lives there. It's
Story
fine.
of my life.
There you go. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Deductionist podcast where we clearly take ourselves very seriously. Um,
Hello.
yes, I mean, of course. I mean, who wouldn't, right? Who wouldn't
Yeah,
take two random people on the internet seriously? I mean,
yeah.
that's the way everybody gets any kind of information nowadays, is from passing faces on the internet.
Look at our faces. These are serious faces. You won't find more serious faces than these, apart from your dreams. In the dark, in the corners of your soul, we dwell.
I was having a conversation with some guys earlier, potential business contacts, and we were
Yeah.
talking about like myth busting within the industry because they work in the realm of non-verbal communication and security background, and they're Marines, and etc. It goes on, it goes on, it goes on. So they've got a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
experience with battling against this type of shit and whatnot. And
Okay.
we were talking about like what is it that we have to kind of keep going into and keep going into, and like my thing was it was bursting celebrity bubbles, and
Hmm.
and I'm sure you've had one of those moments. I have loads because you know how I've joked many times that the important thing is that I think I'm funny. I don't really care what anyone else thinks. Like, I said something in response to it, and I just made myself laugh. And this is the first time I'm meeting these guys, so I've said something, and I'm just laughing in response to it. And I must have looked like
What
such
was
an
their
idiot.
response?
Like it was kind of like one of those kind of yeah. Anyway,
Oh, I know that kind of that response laugh.
that,
I think
like
about that laugh I get in the most vulnerable hours of the night.
yeah. Bill
Whenever I'm
Bailey,
in that
not
situation.
Bill Bailey, Bill Burr describes those kinds of moments, like you know when you're in the shower and you remember those most embarrassing memories from your childhood that make you scream into your fist, where you go, "No, no, I can't believe I said that. No, I can't believe I did that. No."
It's so true though.
But yeah, so we were talking about like the kind of the prevalence of pseudoscience within body language and this kind of thing,
Yeah.
and the notions of what you have to battle through. And it came back to one of the things that I get asked loads is, what about this person's take on this or this person's take on this, because they must be so awesome that they write for this magazine, or they must be so awesome that they wrote this book, or and as we all know
Mm.
from that what as we all know.
Unless you're really ignorant or a child, you should probably know practically anybody can write a book.
You should probably know.
Right,
You
practically
should.
anybody can write a book, and like we were talking about this, like I heard this on this channel because they've got 20 million followers over here or whatever it is, and then they're the number one in the field. I was like, okay, according to who? And the guy the guy was like, what do you mean? It's like, cool. I mean, it's kind of declare yourself number one in the field. Great, but where's the
Yeah.
Olympics of body language experts? How does
Yeah,
how
where's the
does that even
grading go
happen?
there? Yeah.
Is there a system that I missed? And then this was the bit that made me laugh. Like I was like, it's like being back at school. And you know how in primary school there would just be a
Hmm.
declaration that that boy is the hardest boy in the year.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't you don't want to mess with him. I was like, I missed the Mortal Kombat where that was decided, and I just started laughing. Like I just started laughing. He kind of went, yeah. Anyway,
Oh. Imagine if no one had control of that. It was just decided. Like you suddenly inform someone, like because they made a video on observational skills, like one video, and it got loads of hits compared to a series or years worth of videos,
Yeah.
and then you tell that person, because of that popularity of what you put up now, you're now the leading man, you're the spokesperson for everything observational. Go and deal with it. What if we lived by that strategy? What a frightening causality that would be for all of
it
mankind.
would it would be terrifying. It would be
Yeah.
terrifying. Can you think about it kind of like in a flipped conspiracy theory sense that a flat earther video goes ridiculously viral, and then somebody says, well, you're now the moral arbiter of science.
Deal with
What?
it. Oh my god! That's like, what if you owned and ran a bank, but for however many years, and then one person came and put in, the person with the most money in the bank came in that very day. They know more about banking now than anyone ever will, even the person who owns the bloody bank.
I
It's
think
just like,
it's I
well,
think it's but it was just
yeah.
like I just imagined a Mortal Kombat like kind of tournament of primary school kids fighting to the death. Uh, it really cracked me up. It
A
really
battle
cracked me
royale
up.
kind of situation.
Here we go. Board mentions one. This reminds me of a Brazilian channel about body language that is the biggest body language channel in the world and uses Paul Ekman's face reading. You want
Are
to
your
do
favorite guy?
the Buzz Killington thing from Family Guy? You go.
Oh dear.
Anyway, that was just an analogy that popped into my
Paul.
head from a
Yeah.
conversation that I had earlier, and it's kind of prompted the topic of what we're gonna talk about tonight, which is Sherlock Holmes is kind of heralded as fictionally, obviously, as much as it pains me to say, being the massive dork that I am, but fictionally heralded as being this.
He's real, damn it.
Yeah, he's real to me. That's the important thing. Yeah, it turns out he's Scottish and he lives in Vegas. Oh, what a bitch. Uh, anyway, he's kind of heralded as this expert reader of people, and don't get me wrong, I've used it as a ploy before, Sherlockian reading this. I like this is the very nature of the Deductionist podcast, right? But it's done not to kind of put bums on seats or eyes on YouTube videos. I don't even know what the right word is there. It's done from our belief of trying to be pure in terms of what does work, what could work, what won't work, what might work, and we'll tell you what it is and why in that sense. And it got me thinking about the original canon, the original 56 short stories and 4 novels of Conan Doyle. I mean, because there's been I've done tons of book reviews about them as well. There's been loads of other original Sherlock stories, but not penned by Arthur Conan Doyle. And the ones that I've read, which aren't that many in comparison, but the ones that I've read kind of conform to this notion of Sherlock knowing people's minds and actions and motivations, but it's rarely, not that it doesn't happen, but it's rarely through specifically body movements or facial expressions or whatever else it is in that situation. It is done from kind of outside observations. Yeah, like these kind of physical outside kind of surface level deductions that you can make, and then comparing and contrasting to whatever it is that somebody says and or does. Right?
Yeah.
And
how do you think? Sorry.
No, go for it, mate. Go for it.
I was going to say, how do you think that scales up relatively to what it is to actually read someone without using necessarily their body language themselves? Because even for people who aren't familiar with the books, they might be more familiar with the show. Or the films, the more recent films. So you see, as you're saying there, the Sherlock uses the environment, and a lot of it is like the camera focuses on different things around the room as evidence, as a path, as a journey for whoever he's deducing and seeing what they've done. But do you think that's for yourself in working in this field? How accurate do you think that is to the proportionate level of deduction when it comes to reading someone? Like, is it more important to read the person or the things around them, or does one play into the other? Is it like a go-to one you go for, or one that you put before the other?
Yeah, like no, in essence, it is.
Yeah,
It is like it's an analogy that I've used for years, and the people that work with me, whether or you train with me, whatever it is, they're probably sick of hearing me say it. But it's a little like combat, fighting.
yeah,
In that, if me and you were to square up, and I was to think, oh, Adam's going to throw that hook, and I prepare
yeah,
accordingly for that hook, and then you kick me in the balls. Like
yeah,
it's a different thing in that situation, which is why you need to prepare many tools for whatever it is that the situation is that presents itself to you. Which is like why
yeah,
when I was performing, I wouldn't really have a set act. I'd kind of make things up that worked specifically for people's interests, people's likes,
yeah,
people's tastes, that kind of thing. But like, and there was a few paragraphs I wrote on this in the monographs and pipes too. But and I mentioned that only as a cheeky plug, because the monographs too was out May 2nd, May 22nd, excuse me, and Pipes 2 is nearly done. It will nearly be out on Omniscient very soon.
nice.
And the concept was that how could I explain to a body language expert or a lie detection expert or a deception decoder or whatever it is that I once knew my son was lying to me because of a sandwich?
I
Right?
know what you mean.
But by
Sandwiches
no,
tell me things as well.
you are well versed in the age-old arts of tyromancy, sir. There was cheese on it, yeah.
I'll wander downstairs and I'll think I'm minding my own business and no one knows what I've done, and then suddenly my cheese sandwich will say, "You've shat yourself, Adam," and
Not
everybody
again.
knows it.
Not again. God damn it. And like, I mean, granted, that's not a very high stakes scenario, but it is a good example. Like, I didn't have to listen to, the timbre of his voice or the cadence of this or this expression or this movement or whatever it was. Like,
Yeah,
and it formed part and parcel of what I did with one of my old routines that I call ratiocination, in that it basically revolves around like say for example I knew you were right-handed, right? Like, we didn't
yeah,
kind of announce that fact, but I knew you were right-handed. I would then ask you random questions, giving you the option to tell the truth or lie, and then I'd ask you if you were right-handed, tell me, and then you said, "Oh, I'm left-handed." Cool. I know he's lying in that kind of scenario, because I've
yeah.
observed that you're right-handed. I've observed that Gabe lied to me in that particular scenario because of a sandwich that he left on the kitchen table. Now, how do you explain that to somebody that says, "Well, you only have to look at these expressions or these particular movements or whatever it is"? There's no logic. There's no logical way around it. And in in
Yeah,
uh, in in Pipes 2, it struck me that, like, when people get into non-verbal communication for whatever you do, whether it's
yeah,
as part of a mentalist or a job role, or you're just curious, or you're a power dog, right? Whatever it is, whenever somebody mentions the concept of being able to know if somebody's lying to you or not, right? It's
yeah,
interesting on a kind of human level, right? It's interesting
mm,
on a we like the one thing that comes up between us was when I asked you at our old job if you got your cards, and you went, no, I've forgotten them. I was like, have you? You were like, no, they're in my bag. I just don't want you to use them, like, which is fine, because like the context was I'd been cooking or something in the kitchen or whatnot, and I had shit all over my hands, and they were your cards, which is an absolutely respectable and fine thing for you to do, you know. But like when people get into the concept of lie detection or lie spotting, it's kind of got this cool sex appeal thing about it. But if you think about it, if you were to walk out into the world and actually try and look for lies, you're biasing yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Everything falls into that realm of it. Well, they could be lying to me because that's what you're looking for. You know,
Yeah.
like I had a similar conversation with a friend of mine who was having some. It was like an existential crisis. He was looking for love and kept striking out, striking out. He was never short of offers. Beautiful man, really lovely person, very charismatic, smart, good job, all of this kind of thing. But
Yeah.
it kept kind of fizzling out. And when he spoke to me about it, he was like, "Well, so I want this in a woman, this in a woman, this in a woman, this in a woman, and all these kinds of things." He knew what he wanted. I was like, "Well, there's your problem." He was, what do you mean? What do you mean? Anybody that now doesn't fit that stereotype to the fucking letter has gone.
Yeah.
It's
never
gone.
gonna happen, is it?
It's gone by default. You've immediately shortened your pool of people that you could realistically bump into.
Yeah.
People could eventually fit that over time, or you could find that with the right person, that isn't actually something that you want. So it circles back to what you were saying previously in terms of your question. You never know really what technique or method or whatever it is that you're going to use to observe someone, which is why on my business cards for many years it simply just said observe everything. that was the shorthand to it. And whereas let's face it, we're humans, we can't observe everything. Right? Even though I know my neighbours are in over the road because there's a crack in my curtain and I can see shadows moving. They've got thin curtains. I can see shadows moving around. I can see that the TV's on, but I can't really observe what they're doing or where they're sitting or what they're talking about or how they look when they say this or whatever it is. I can observe simply that there are people in that house. Right? That's
There's a straight up thing going on there. That's what's happened. Do you think it's
that
like
is what's happening.
we make these like guesses about what's going on, like with looking over at your neighbours over the road and say, like, I don't know, they frequently have swinging parties, and it's a known fact. You've known that beforehand, and then you see this over the road. You look out your window, you see the people moving behind the curtains, and you can put those two and twos together, can't you? You can kind of like use other facts and the fact that there's now maybe more than one shadow going on behind there, and you can make three, as it were. But do you think it also can backfire when you sort of use facts you know beforehand and the presence observation of what you're seeing? Because obviously
100%.
that might be a previous assumption, but that could just be maybe they have a teenage son now that you haven't seen 100%. In a while, that has grown up and is the same size as them and looks like a third person walking behind the curtains.
Yeah, 100%. And just as it, like, I'm going to take these off as well. I'm trying more when I don't have to read something on the screen to take these off.
Yeah.
Like, one of the guys that I work with pointed out that it's kind of difficult to know where you're looking at and direct a kind of proper conversation because you can't see my eyes. You can just see the reflections of the screen, which is fair enough. So I'm not reading anything. Here are my eyeballs. But in terms of what you were talking about, just Doctor Strange it right there. But yeah, it's pretty much like a confirmation bias, right? It's pretty much that way around. There's a great scene in House where he falls foul of somebody kind of indulging his flirtatious sexualized humor. It's in a Christmas episode. I forget which season, and it's this woman that comes in with I think it was a skin irritation, and House is attracted to her. She's this young blonde woman, and she's talking about like, well, yeah, I'm in a show, and he's like, House immediately is like, tell me more, in that way, and she's like, well, everybody watches. I ride a donkey. Right? Turns out she's just talking about being in a nativity play. That's all she's talking about.
Oh, it
And
is.
like when he goes to the church at the end to see her, and she comes riding in like side saddle, side, I don't know what it's called, not one leg either side of the animal, but both legs one side. I presume
Yeah.
that's called side saddle. I don't actually know. But she's dressed in the full Mary regalia with a pillow up her, I don't know what you would call it, a poncho. I don't know. And
This
she's
Mexican
riding in.
nativity.
Yeah, whatever it is. And she sees House in the corner and just kind of winks at him. He's like, "You cheeky kawanky tanker, absolutely terrible." But that's what it is. Like if you imagine a kind of a situation where, well, we would experience it sometimes in the place that we used to work at. This new starter's just come in, but they're a bit funny, or they're a bit short, or they're a bit grumpy, or whatever it is. And then we go and talk to them. It turns out the fucking ace. They just didn't like the people that they were talking to before. If it is that you lean too far into the information that you've got ahead of time as pure certainty, as
Yeah.
pure irrefutable fact, then that's when you're going to fall foul of those kinds of biases again in that
Yeah.
situation. Like in terms of lie detection, one of the critical thinking questions I always ask people is, can somebody lie without knowing that they're lying?
Ooh, that's a good one. I
Like,
mean, technically,
what's your
you,
immediate kind of way of answering that question?
I would say no, because if you don't think you're lying, you're telling the truth at that present moment. It might be an incorrect truth, but it's not technically a motivated lie. So it's just you're just wrong. If
This is it.
in that
This is when
scenario.
we get into grey area. That would be a lie of
Yeah.
omission. So, like, say for example, I told you, like, I'm wearing a pair of Vans now, and I told you, yeah, they're a special edition Vans. They cost me £2,000. And we went through the
Mm.
whole conversation about it, and you went away to tell Becky. He was like, "Fucking hell, Ben's paid £2,000 for a pair of shoes. What a dickhead!" This kind of thing. When I'm sitting there, like, I actually didn't pay for them at all. They were a birthday gift. you know, you've then lied to Becky without
Yeah,
knowing
because you've
that you were
misinterpreted it.
lying in that particular way. But you're absolutely right to say that if you don't know that it's a lie, or you lie, and this is the grey area. When
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
dealing with people reading and human behaviour, there are objective truths that can be seen, but depending upon personal interpretation of them is to whether they'll be confirmed or not. Which is why I think, and obviously I'm basing this on fiction, so there's no way to confirm left or right, but it's why I think that Sherlock behaved the way that he did, and House by default behaved the way that he did. He preferred to get his information from anywhere other than the person at the source.
yeah,
Right? So when he could come back and talk to the source, it's easier to separate fact, fiction, truth, lie, grey area, this type of thing, because
yeah,
you know what's
yeah. Of course.
irrefutable, and then you can come and compare it to the person in that way. This
Doesn't that make human beings like the maddest thing to ever exist in terms of like truth telling and fact observation? We, as the source, are the worst kind of source
God,
for
yeah,
that. So for resolution of the source,
100%,
it's bizarre.
100%, mate. There was a guy I met on a course in London a few years ago, and like it wasn't my course that I was running. I was there as a kind of student attendee, whatever you call them.
Mm.
And as luck and loveliness would have it, there was a lot of people there that had bought the monographs. So I was talking to a few of them about it, which was lovely, genuine interest in this kind of thing. And there's one chap from Brazil goes, "Go on then, what do I do for a living?" And I looked at his shoes and went, "Well, you work in sales." And he went, "No, no, no." I was like, "Oh, well, fair enough. Maybe educate me then. What is it that you actually do for a living?" He was like, "Well, me and my partner, we were on training courses, and he is the kind of brains that comes in and delivers all of the information, and I make sure we get repeat bookings and new clients in." I was like, "So you
Sales.
work in sales then?" you know. But like the personal interpretation of that is that he saw it as more than sales,
Right. Yeah.
you know, which is fair enough. But like on the outside, you work in sales. It was
Yeah.
like when that lady that worked for Trump was like, no, he wasn't lying. It was just alternative facts. Shut up, love.
That's a bit of a stretch.
Like, I understand what you're doing with you know lessening the dialogue and whatnot, but you are full of
In
shit
that
here.
case, I have never lied.
Yeah,
I've only
never
told
lied.
alternative truths.
Alternative truth, alternative facts. But it's an important distinction. Like there's been a few times where I've called out people in training groups, in friendship groups, online, whatnot, as you feel this. And they'd be like, no, 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 whatever it was. One thing I hear a lot, like whether it be from Gabe or family, friends or whatnot. Well, anyway, I don't care. Well, you do, because you're complaining to me about it. So if you didn't care, it wouldn't be something that
Oh
needed to
yeah,
come out of you. So you care. There's nothing wrong with
yeah.
caring. There's nothing wrong with it, right? But if you're complaining about it, you care enough to complain. Like one can make the argument that I care about Love Island because I care about what I think that it does to it, and I care about Justin Bieber because what I think his music's shit, and it irritates me. This kind of thing. It's that's just the meaning of the words in that way. What changes is
Yeah.
the personal interpretation based on like on need and you know a prevalence and place in that
Yeah.
particular world, which is why I would much prefer to observe action and then feed it back to them to check their personal interpretation. And this is why I think Sherlock in the books and people who've adopted this kind of method in real garner success.
Yeah.
In that, it's a little like
So,
battleships,
yeah, pretty much.
you know.
Absolutely. I was going to say it's like where we used to work. There was a few people we used to work with who, when I've first got them on Facebook and stuff, and we'd interact all with each other
Yeah,
more so back then, and I'd keep tabs of what they put up because obviously it would be talked about later at
yeah,
work or something like that. And
yeah.
there was
That's right.
one person in particular, lovely woman, absolutely lovely woman, and obviously I won't say her name, but uh, troubled with the truth of her own emotive state, and it was constantly
I
stuff
think I
on
know what
there
you're
where,
talking about.
and she, so I'm not saying that this is particularly her, this is kind of like I'm speaking in a broader term of people that do this on social media where they put
Yeah.
something up saying they are not bothered by such and such a person, and they do not care about this drama, or they do not care what people think of them, and it's followed usually by some sort of positive quote, and this will be repeat behavior of them.
Hmm.
They obviously fall foul to whatever emotions they get through
Yeah.
when interacting with certain people, and they air it on Facebook as a couldn't give a toss,
Yeah.
couldn't give a shit what you
Why?
think of me, but you clearly do because you've gone out your way to air your dirty laundry online, and it's just like it constantly do that. There's clearly not that, like I say, she was a lovely woman, and I wish it was the case of realize that you do care about what's being said about you,
Yeah.
and you don't
Which is
have to
fine.
continue through this cycle of lying that you don't
Yeah.
care. And you can deal with it then. You can deal with it better. You can maybe think about, maybe I'm doing something that is, causing this to
Yeah.
happen all the time. And that's not saying stuff like this is always people's fault or anything like that. It's just the
No,
truth of
no,
yourself.
absolutely.
Like we're saying
That's it.
about the source. It's harder to see the source. You can
Yeah.
lie. I suppose, like you say, lie. This goes back to what you asked me at the beginning. Can you lie without knowing you're lying? And I suppose you can.
Absolutely you can. Yeah,
That's the
absolutely you
perfect.
can.
That's probably. I changed my answer, and that's an example I'm probably giving now. It's like, yeah, I've
Yeah.
seen someone lying. They don't know they're lying to themselves.
Yeah, like it's a baffling, but equally from a kind of an objective observational standpoint, it's so insightful. You know, it's so
Yeah,
insightful to look at somebody that like can't or won't confront that because it's so full of information.
Yeah,
In that way, it's so full of workable,
100%.
actionable intel. In terms of, you could look at it in terms of Maslow's hierarchy, human givens, any kind of needs, values based protocol, Schwartz,
Yeah,
whatever it is, whatever the psychologies you're looking at. And what do they need in that scenario? Well, they need to not feel like they're being scrutinized by somebody else.
yeah,
That is huge from an
yeah,
observation. That is
yeah,
huge from an observational perspective, and absolutely fine
100%.
human to human. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's not like you're stamping on puppies or anything, Like, what are you talking about? So you have a feeling about something else. Awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
So what? So what? And again, this
yeah,
is why I think Sherlock preferred to deal in observable, objective, like unfiltered, unencumbered truisms, which is why
mm,
a lot of people will ask, like, oh, well, I've observed this, so what? Right?
yeah,
Technically, it depends on how you use it. Like, this is going to sound so dorky. I was talking to someone about shoelaces the other day, right? Honestly, this was a genuine conversation I, as a 37-year-old male, had with another person, and we were talking about the kind of protocol of tying shoelaces. Even though it was an indication of wealth, there is the removal of shoelaces in favour of buckles or slip-ons or whatever it is. Let's not get into brogue territory where even higher up the hierarchical scale, your shoelaces become thinner. Like, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. I've done a 90-minute lecture on shoelaces, mate. So, and
I mean,
like I
I
was,
recently learned that the gravity undoes your shoelaces over time, not
yeah.
movement. That shocked me. I just thought, well, eventually, just a lace go.
Well, it's gravity in relation to force and how tightly you apply the knot and the
Ah,
kind of knot that you apply. But that's also directly in relation to how you tie the knot in the first place, as to whether you're a person that sits down. Like, if you, I can't think out of mind. Like, if this is your knee joint, so this is your knee. You're sitting
yeah, yeah,
down with your knee and your toes pointing forward, then you kind of
yeah,
put your other leg on the side of your knee in order to light lean down and tie, or you kind of bend down from the waist and tie it, or you squat down with both feet on the floor and tie it. That
yeah,
then is massive information I've learnt about from looking at your shoelaces. I've learnt about your health. I've learnt about your skeleton. I've learnt about your physical activity. I've learnt about your attitude to all three of those previous elements and what kind of a prevalence they place in your life. I've learnt about the kind of
yeah, yeah,
speed that you went through your day. I've learnt about the kind of foresight that your morning routine has, so I know what kind of time you get up in relation to how rushed you move out the door. And, like, I'm
yeah.
talking to this guy and he's just going, oh God, that's too much in a shoelace. It's too much in a shoelace. It's too much. And he was like, let me
I was
just
going to say, I'll
this
tell.
last thing.
Sorry,
This
yeah.
last thing. And then he was like thinking he got me. Well, what if you went into a house and the guy had shoes and no shoelaces anywhere? I was like, come on. His mode of choice for needing shoes that don't have shoelaces because he can't be asked, because there is a laziness. Or on the flip side of that, there is a requirement for speed, requirement for comfort, requirement for a specific style. Like, dude, come on. This it's all there. It's all there.
Oh, brilliant! I
What were you
mean,
going to say, mate?
I get the kind of information that laces can give you because,
Mm,
like you say, if things being insightful, my relationship with laces are an insight to me, not just my own but other
mm,
people's. I
yeah.
think of laces as just it's one of the most tedious tasks in the world. So when I do my lace, I quickly bend to the knee
Mm,
and do it. If, to be fair, rarely bend to the knee. If I can just bend down without having to move any other limb out of place and
mm,
just do it quickly with
mm,
my hands, I'll get it done. It bothers me to have to sit down and lift the leg up, and so
yeah,
if I ever have to sort laces out because the knot's fucked, and
yeah,
you're like, rattling with it for ages. I don't know why, but it grates the fuck out of me to do it for myself. Watching other people have to sit down to lift a knee up and to do their laces, like where we used to work, we'd see that happen quite often, and it used to really make me. Oh, fuck.
Oh,
It
fucking hell.
made me feeling impatient and
Yeah.
agitated, and
No, mate,
really, there was
I get
absolutely
it.
no reason for that at all.
I totally get it. I totally get it. Like
It's a mad thing.
mine wasn't about shoelaces, but mine was a similar thing. I felt the same way about putting socks on.
Yeah.
The same way about putting socks on, which is why when I got myself a pair of Vibram Barefoots, you know, the shoes with like the toe openings at the front.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have to wear socks. It was a barefoot shoe. Fucking golden. Like that pleased me no end. And like it's the reason I wear slippers. Like if I go out to work and whatnot, or I'm on a case or whatever it is, socks, shoes, fine. That's part of the job, you know. I still hate it. I still hate putting. It's just fucking hell. It's like putting feet condoms on. I don't really, you know.
Mine's get them off because I have to. I double sock at the moment for work, so I'll put double sock on and then a thermal sock on, and if I can't whip it off as soon as I get in. It's like being in some sort of restraint. You want out of it.
This might be too much of an insight, and it's definitely from the ignorant male in the scenario because not having breasts. I can't comment on this scenario, but like apparently it's the same for women. And speaking to Maddie about the notion of bras and whatnot, when you've had to wear a bra. For a long day of like she works like 12 14-hour shifts at a time, so when you've had to wear one all day and then to come home, the first thing is rip this off and whatnot, because the comfort that you get as a result, and in her words, she doesn't want to live in boob jail. Yeah.
Freedom.
Lucifer Morningstar's here. Hello,
Lucifer Morningstar.
Morningstar, welcome. Love your show. It's a great show. Tell me, Lucifer, what is your desire? It's a wonderful show. And Tom Ellis is tons of fun in it.
Oh, incredible!
His men's health video shit, but when they do a train like Lucifer, train like Thor, train like Reacher, his garbage. It's terrible. It's really bad. Really bad.
I wouldn't be able to take him seriously being Lucifer. I feel like there's some darker undertone there.
But yeah, this is the kind of the kind of quandary that I have, and this is why I'm so fond of Sherlock when it comes to reading people and non-verbal communication skills, because arguably the notion of body language or reading a person's movement could not be any lower down the list. Like it couldn't be.
I suppose it's like with Sherlock as well. There's always been hints that of like an autistic sense to it. There's always been rumours that there's something about him that he doesn't necessarily take on the emotional sort of elements of fact reading and observation in a person, and so the room is more of a truth. It responds to him more, I guess, if you look at it from that point of view, than a person would. Like, because if a person is lying, there's a confusion of emotions going on there. There's confusion of something happening, isn't there? So that's not going to naturally come to the surface. So you're naturally going to go to the thing that tells more truth, to the things in the room as they go around, isn't it? You sort of, in a way, we lie, but we are drawn to the truth. But we also are.
It's an interesting concept from a human perspective. Like, it's an interesting concept, and like Sherlock, even before the BBC show, like I was of the opinion that Sherlock is one of the most emotional characters that there is. It's just he's got more control over its influence. You know, he's got more control over its influence. There's been times, like I'm not going to talk too much about my kind of personal family life. You'll know what I'm talking about because I've spoken to you about it. But there's been times I've spoken to my mum about whatever kind of issues has been going on there, and I've been like, well, just do this. Like, oh God, how can you be so cold? I'm not being cold. It's just that is how you solve that particular problem that you have.
That's a solution for it.
Yeah. Like she was, I can actually, one just popped into my head from something that she was telling me the other day. One of her old colleagues has sadly died. It is an awful scenario, and it turns out that my mum didn't like him. She'd not spoken to him for years, but because they used to work together, that kind of thing travels down the grapevine, as it does with us and Steve and Marion and this kind of thing. You know, when people sadly die who you've not worked with, information trickles because of Facebook and social media and phone numbers and all this kind of thing. And she didn't like him because apparently he was a bit of a dick as a manager. And Mum was like, yeah, people keep calling me and like, oh God, I don't really know how to react because I wanna like, I don't want to talk about how much I didn't like because I didn't like him and it seems disingenuous and it's real sad and whatnot. I was like, Mum, like if somebody says to you, this guy died, just go, oh no, how's his wife? Solved.
That's a good one.
Solved. You sound like you care, and you've not asked to ask him about it at all. You just stay in control of your emotion thing, and this is what I'm saying. And I've talked about this again many times. Emotional qualities are antagonistic to clear reasoning. Doesn't mean you don't have any.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that at all. Emotional is letting go. Oh my God, she's been so emotional. Is when somebody goes, crying or laughter or whatever. It'd be so emotional, right?
Yeah.
Which is that's emotional qualities being antagonistic to clear reasoning, but the qualities of emotion or understanding it mean you just understand it. You don't have to experience it. I understand the breadth of emotion. The breadth of emotion. I don't have to experience half of it if I don't want to. I don't have to experience half of it. There was I was speaking to JD, one of the companies that I use to help my students. It was like a training platform. It was a separate web app in this kind of thing. And the end of the story is I cancelled my service with them. I cancelled it, right? Because they were basically trying to up the cost but decrease elements of the service. And they were like, well, in order to make sure the app function is there, we do a lot of talking to clients, and if this isn't being used or this isn't being used, then in order to free up bandwidth so the app runs properly, we'll get rid of this. So I'm like, no, but I use it. I don't give a shit about what any of these other people do. I use it. So think about my position, because you are upping my cost and decreasing my function in that way. That is the worst business angle that there's ever been.
Out the fucking window.
There's ever been. And so, like, I actually was a bit sneaky in terms of my social engineering. I kind of got them to tell me all about their business plan and stuff, which they probably shouldn't have done. But that's what happened now. But anyway, the kind of long and short of it was, I sat there thinking to myself, well, like, what's in my control? This is now irritating me. I don't want to feel irritated. What can I do to solve this? Well, I can cancel my service. Done. Done. Right? I can increase in other areas and make the additional stuff myself. Will it take a bit longer? Yes. But the experience that my students, my friends, anybody that trains with me the other side, they will get the same. Is that what I care about? Yes. So cool.
Yeah. You've got a solution faster. You got to the truth faster of what you needed to do.
Exactly. One could argue, calling back to the previous topic that we were talking about, is I stopped caring. Right? Yeah. I initially cared a lot because I was going back and forth with them trying to figure it out, and when it was clear that it wasn't, well, it could have, but I couldn't really be bothered to give it the time to change them. So when it was clear that was on the table, I was like, I'm out, stop caring, this is what's happening, done, bye, see you later. And that's pretty much the end result. And again, people talk about Sherlockian people. Like, I have a course of Sherlockian people reading, and that specifically does not talk about body language at all. Right? So if you come to me to talk about my Sherlockian people reading course, hoping that you're going to look at how to read people through their body language or their movement or whatever other kind of buzzwords you want to talk about in that way, you ain't going to get that. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. But like, this is when people like, because I used to work with a guy in the CIA a while back, which isn't one of those. Oh, it's a flex. It's just because I can't say his name, so you can tell me, so you can kind of talk about where he came from. We had this discussion about the term of reading people in that way, and reading people, and like me, I don't care. On a personal level, I don't care what you call anything, so long as somebody knows what you're on about. Not bothered. And he was very much why it creates this kind of image that you can read people like books, and you can't do that and whatnot. I'm like, well, maybe if you're being very autistic about the process. Like, I don't go to McDonald's and expect to eat Ronald McDonald, right? I don't.
If his
I don't
hand
go to,
is not between a bap
exactly.
and a thumb isn't in my chicken nuggets, I'm vastly disappointed.
I don't go to Curry's and expect to get a tikka masala. Yeah. For those of you that don't know, it's for those of you that don't know, it's like an electrician. No, sorry, electrical TVs, computers, washing machines, that kind of thing. But this is my adage in that kind of scenario, which is why I couldn't really give a shit about buzzwords. Like most people attach, body language, it's this, and I just no. that's the fact of the matter. Is it? No, it's not. Anyway, but again, go on, what are you going to say?
I was going to say this is a bit of a throwback. Unless you wanted to say something connected to what you're on about now, I was about to throw this back to what we were talking to before about when we were talking about emotions, sort of like getting in the way of the truth and what have you. And you were talking about obviously how to deal with certain things. You say things, and people are like worried about something. You say, "Well, just do this," and it sorts it out, that kind of thing. And because you've thought about it logically and done it, and it's worked out fine. But I remember again going back to the place we worked at together one time where there was a woman called I might as well say I'm probably never going to see her again now, Mel, and she worked in our area of the unit, and she was being moved over to another area that she didn't want to go to, and she was kicking up a right fuss about it. I don't know if you remember chairs being thrown across the kitchen and whatnot. A very, very angry woman, and it was like, "Ooh, fucking hell!" Like she's risen a bit there, like just taking that a bit too far, and it was quite funny at the time, and I wasn't emotionally at her level and didn't feel particularly sort of like as angered and annoyed as she was. You just kind of find it like bit funny to watch, and then didn't see her for a week, and then I found myself wandering through that part of the unit and happened to see her there, tears down her eyes, takeaway next to her, looking very aggravated, looking like she wanted to talk to someone, and unfortunately I was passing by and I thought, I have a feeling she's just going to moan a bag off, but I
have to be a human being. Here we go.
Yeah, and already I've done that, and I've emotionally engaged with something that's going to sort of taint my actual whole view of this situation. So I was like, everything all right, everything going okay, and I got the whole, it could be better. I hope it gets better. It's just horrible right now. And I remember rising myself, feeling like, when you want to snap at someone, you're like, just fucking Christ almighty, it's not that bad. It's not the end of the world, is it? Yeah, no one's died. Calm down. Luckily didn't say any of that. And I was just like, you just need to, Jesus. And I kind of abruptly ended it. And I was just like, well, we're all sad working here. Sorry, see you later. Came back to where our unit was, told everyone that she's still moaning on, and next minute I was told her husband's just died. She should have stayed home. She's come back in like a week earlier than she needed to.
Oh God, I can't believe I said that.
Well, and I was like, I'm still can't believe it. Still trying to adapt. Still can't. And I was just like, oh no, all the things she said. all the meaning, all the obvious pointers, something. And I remember in my head, I remember thinking, "Thank God you didn't say it's luckily it's not like
Oh
no one
God, no
died."
one died. Someone did.
Oh
Oh,
God!
oh
And
God.
that's purely because I might have been able to assume something like that had happened had I not gone straight to oh fucking hell,
Mm.
here she goes, because immediately then I just assume she's talking about what she was annoyed at before, and thus made me annoyed at her for the wrong thing. Got annoyed at a
Oh,
bereaving woman.
that's it. People are weird, aren't they? People are
Yeah,
weird. Like
it's mad.
I think it's part and parcel of why I love this job role so much, and why I kind of grow fondness for Sherlock, because I've always liked puzzles
Yeah,
in some form. I always like puzzles, and not to
humans are
sound like
walking puzzles.
humans are a puzzle that will never be solved. They will
Nah.
never be solved. Like I was explaining to Gabe the other day, as he's kind of getting to the stage now where he's starting to do things for himself and pay his own bills and whatnot and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like he puts rather at one stage, according to his mum. So I don't know how verifiably true this is because he doesn't hear. So I don't know how true this is. But as a concept, like I thought it was fun. That he puts like 4 or 5 sugars in his coffee and honey,
Oh, right.
and I'm like, I was like, dude, why? He was like, I just like the way it tastes. I was like, that's fine. You're not drinking coffee. And
Why
he's
have
like,
the
what do you?
coffee?
He was like, what do you mean? So I took the pains to explain why that much of that other material just diffuses, all of the caffeine and all of the other elements that go into to make up coffee. So you're just drinking warm sugar. That's all you're doing. You are the older version of the cockroach from MIB. You're just having a warm sugar water instead of a cold one. That's all you're doing. And no, but no, it doesn't. It might taste nice, but it's not coffee. So the things are confusing. You either like coffee or you like shoveling sugar in, right? Either way, figure out which one it is, and you know how to shop accordingly. And he was like, so you're okay with me doing that? I was like, no, this is another conversation just about where your head's at. Putting that much shit in your face is terrible. It's a terrible idea. Your teeth will die long before you will. In that situation, but this is what we were saying about the human perception of their own experience. He might have well been
Mm.
under the way, and people might just assume one thing or another thing or whatnot about his reason for putting those in, and he could verifiably deny that on the basis that he's just doing it because it tastes good in that way, which to him is fair enough. It's dumb. It's dumb as a bag of rocks, but that's his answer to that. There was
Yeah.
I'll give you an example about people reading on that same course. There was an American lady that I met, and she was she visibly took care of herself, right? She visibly took care of herself. She obviously works out. She got very kind of toned arms and shoulders that come out of doing CrossFit and this kind of thing. She'd got her makeup all done and her hair done. She was a beautiful woman. And the group that we were in, we were talking about like kind of the world. We were trying to be quite grandiose because, to be fair, we were all pretty pissed at the time. So we were just talking about these things, and she starts talking about the microplastics in the ocean and the damage
Mm.
it's doing to to sea life and all of these kinds of things that has been put through the news. So I won't bore everyone else with it. You all know what I'm talking about.
Mm.
And then everyone splinters off, and like there's new groups are formed, new conversations are formed, and then she came up to me after and was like, you're apparently the Sherlock guy. I was like, apparently, that's fair enough. Like, and we started talking about it, and then she goes, so can you tell me? So can you tell what somebody does for a living just by looking at them? So two things pop up in my head on the back of that. Yeah. The second being, obviously, her job is important enough to her that she would ask about that first, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it is, because that isn't the kind of question where somebody's asking me to teach them how to do it out of intrigue for the kind of holy grail that it apparently is. So, I'm kind of talking to her and breaking down the process, and she was wearing like normal jeans, normal top, pair of Ugg boots, that kind of thing, and it was early January, so it was cold. So you've got this kind of this beautiful woman who knows, based on the interactions of other people, that she's perceived as beautiful, but she's dressed for comfort rather than any kind of provocation in that way. Because we were in a restaurant, it was like a high enterprise bar in London. You know, it was the opportunity to kind of put your glad rags on, so to speak. She just put a warm coat on, one of those, I still don't know what women call them, but it was like a big furry headband, one of those as well. And she's got her Ugg boots on. She's dressed for comfort rather than it. So immediately I'm thinking, beautiful woman, actively takes care of herself. It would take that kind of time, but she's dressed for comfort rather than looks. She's a model. Like that's what I was thinking at that time. She's a model because she spends all of the time being uncomfortable in like high heels or walking down a catwalk or whatever it is. But anyway, the kind of conversation changed at that stage. Other people came to talk to other people, and as is what usually happens in a conversation about skill, I wind up talking about memory methods. So that's where the conversation kind of turned off. Next day comes by, and she's talking about like how everyone found the first day, because she's friends with the guy that's running the course, and she had done some one-on-ones with him, and then she was talking about the experiences. And she says, I went to this party, this ball or gala, you know, I forget which kind of word she used, but she was talking about this whole experience. And there was me and two other guys. This one guy called Alex, who was from Australia, and he was talking to me about coding. It's like, you are wasting your time, pal. I am so not a fucking coder. And then there was this other guy with us listening to her story, and like she was back and forth, and she was like, so I end up meeting this woman and her husband, and naturally the question comes about what you do for a living. So my antennae are up. I'm like, oh, here we go. We're about to see if we're right or wrong. And these were her words. She went, now normally when I tell a woman what I do, it turns a bitch cold. Like I can't do it with that kind of American twang that she had, but that was what she said.
Incredible.
Turns a bitch cold. So I'm thinking in my head, what would turn somebody cold? Like I know she cares about the environment and this kind of thing, or cares about people because of how she was talking about animals and the welfare and life and all this kind of thing from the day before. I know a job's kind of important, so statistically, it's probably not anything like racist or anything where it hurts else or whatnot. So what's controversial that also deals with the realms of beauty? And my brain went, she works in the adult industry in some way. She works in the adult industry in some way. So I'm immediately, I remember my face at the time when she was talking, like if I look at the camera and I'm kind of talking to her and she went, turns a bitch cold, and my eyes went like that way, because it just dawned on me what the potential proper answer to the question was.
Oh my god!
And I didn't want to bring it up because she'd asked me that initial question like when it was just me and her. So clearly it was it was important to her in that way. Yeah. So based on the stories that she's told, she's clearly had a lot of kind of bad experience with telling people what she does for a living, and it turns a bitch cold. So I didn't kind of say that I'd arrived at an answer.
That's the new catchphrase for the show.
Turns a bitch cold. Yeah, I didn't say that I'd arrived at an answer. Anyway, next day, and me being me, I'd arrived early. You know, it's just a quirk. I'd rather arrive 2 hours too early than 2 minutes too late. It's a preference. So I'm just sat outside before everyone goes in, Just having a coffee, as you do before you start. It's like 0 dark 30 of a London morning, so it's cold. Coffee, it's standard breakfast of champions. And
Yeah, of course.
the guy that's running the course comes in, and we're talking back and forth and whatnot. And he says, like, "Hey, have you met?" Kind of jovially nudging me like that, like the kid in science class that just heard the word boobies for the first time. This
know.
this kind of thing. Have you met such and such a person? I was like, yeah. She seems very nice, very smart, very switched on, and she was very competent with all the methods, which sounds incredibly kind of like judgmental, but I don't know what else to say. She sounded like she knew what she was talking about. That's all I can really say.
Yeah.
She seemed nice,
Yeah.
and so he was like, do you know who she is? So I, no, not really. Told him about what, the kind of conversations that were transpired. And he went, oh, yeah, she's the second-rated porn star on the planet. I was like,
I beg you, what?
say what?
This bitch just turned cold.
I was like, so in my head, there's a little bit childish, like I've met someone in the adult industry kind of thing, because I'd never met anyone in the adult industry before. But also in my head's going, fuck, that was pretty good deduction on my part. That's pretty fucking good. I was onto something there in that kind of situation.
Nice.
But like that's really the nature of Sherlockian people reading at its core that way. None of that did I arrive at by virtue of her body language. It was critical thinking based on whatever it was that was presented in that initial circumstance. Followed it through to a conclusion. As Jim would say, we validate, dismiss, or clarify the information as we move forward, and it then presents us with new data, because this is it's like a hard way of looking at a soft science.
Yeah.
So things aren't as hard. If for those unfamiliar, a hard science would be like 2 + 2 is 4. That is what it is, right? If you're doing a softer science, you'll be saying 2 + 2 could be 4. Depends on your perception. Depends on the all this other kind of shit.
Your interpretation. Your artistic interpretation of math.
Your belief, but the Earth's still a sphere. If you think it's not, you're wrong. Simple. But I'm starting to think with that type of thing as a quick digression. I'm going to operate from a Keanu Reeves way of life, just for being happier. There was an interview he did for John Wick 2 that popped up as I was scrolling through Reels today, just as a doom scroll. He was like, I'm at that time in my life where I'm just avoiding arguments, and the lady was like, what do you mean? He was like, if somebody tells me 1 + 1 is 5, I'm like, you're right, best of luck. He was like, what do I care? It's like, fair play. And it circles back to the whole thing. What do I care if you think the Earth's flat? You're wrong. Best of luck. Enjoy. It doesn't really matter, does it?
I had my own Keanu Reeves moment the other day when I was doom scrolling myself. Found an interview about The Matrix where he met his friend's 2 teenage daughters who hadn't seen The Matrix, and the 14-year-old asked him, like, I heard my dad says you made The Matrix and it was a really good film. What's it about? And it's like, oh, it's a guy who's living inside an AI machine and synthetic world, and he wants to get out but doesn't know what out is, but needs to get out so he knows the truth. And she's like, oh, is outside better? Is out of the Matrix better then? He's like, no, it's horrible. It's like a dystopian world. It's like, oh, why not just stay in the Matrix then? Yeah, because it's fake. He's like, but it's better. He's like, well, yeah. And she's like, so who cares? Just stay in the Matrix. And he's like, whoa.
Whoa.
He's like,
whoa.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
You gotta love it. Unfiltered truisms. It's great. But yeah, so there we go, guys. Let's have a look. We not that much action in the comments, so let's have a look. Here we go. I'm really curious about the shoelaces reading now. Where can I find more material about it, and could you make a live about it? God, that would be the most niche live that's ever been done by anyone, anywhere, ever.
Should we just have the camera on our shoes?
The whole time, but I don't have any shoelaces. Just
my one fungal term.
In terms of finding more material about it, there isn't really anywhere I can point you. in that the vast kind of, I was about to sound like a right twat, so I'm going to stop doing that. I heard the sentence in my head, and the little voice in my brain went, "Yeah, don't say that." Yeah, don't say that. But yeah, the material that I have about it has kind of been through, like market research and who markets a particular product to what kind of people, what kind of price range, and that kind of thing, and looking at commonalities of that specific target group based on the product itself, and then drawing conclusions from it. It's an area of personal research more so than anything. So if there is something that exists on it in the same way that I have it, I couldn't point you to it because I simply don't know. I don't know. All of the material that I use in that area is by a personal use, personal expression, and personal development that way around. So make of that what you will. It's not been peer reviewed. It's not been scientifically tested, which is why, shock horror, I don't put it in print anywhere. It's just something that I use in my own work. So yeah, there's that, and in terms of making a live about it, maybe, it's much more fun in terms of conversations to go with topics that people have some kind of vested interest or some kind of vested knowledge about, rather than going, hey, so aglets on shoelaces after 6 months, why do we think the plastic breaks in this particular way? And most people going,
Well, there's me in the corner. I tied my lace together. I've
oh, I've
actually
shit
tied my
myself
shoes together.
around your neck. How did this happen?
I'm actually wearing slippers.
I don't know your opinion about it. I presume that's supposed to be, but I kind of take deduction more like a hard science, in the way like you're either right or wrong in your deductions. I'm kind of similar in that I don't believe being wrong exists in this field. I don't believe you can be wrong. I think you're either right, or you learn something else. I think you're either onto something, or you're presented with data that will change what it is that you originally thought. It keeps going. I think of it as like
It's a
some of the
way of
time.
interpreting.
Yeah, it's like it's not strictly speaking quantum, but I'm analogizing a quantum kind of thing. I'm analogizing in the sense that when you watch a time travel movie, you talk about how can this point of time exist. It changes because you looked at it. So there's a specific context that you can observe from afar, and then once you get involved, it's a different context by default, right? So it's changing, the whole time. So that's kind of my short view on it. Here we go. Lionel Cardona. Besides Sherlock, which is the best fictional detective or detectives you have seen or read about? Best being, there's no real Olympics. We still haven't done a watch along of the Butt Detective. Come on.
These happen this year.
Yeah,
Butt Detective.
In terms of a best detective, it is in my opinion like those kind of things where you declare yourself number one in the field, where there's no fucking gold medal of this kind of thing. There's no gold medal of detectives. I can tell you which is my favourite and why. It's two arguably from polar ends of the literary spectacle. For me, other than Sherlock, it would be Poirot and Reacher, because
Nice.
they both have very smart, very insightful, very intelligent ways of doing their observational ways, but in terms of gathering and acquiring more data, they have very different perspectives. But they both kind of attribute the whole kind of bull in a china shop kind of thing. Well, I'm going after the information. What about this person? Who gives a shit? I need this information, kind of thing. Yeah. And I like that in a story, because that's the same way I approach life. Like when I got my psychotherapy diplomas, and it's only in my head, because I was talking to a couple of guys about it the other day, and they were like, "You've got psychotherapy background?" Yeah. I left as fast and as quickly as I could. I went to maybe like 3 of the classes and still passed the exam. Like, not that it was any I'm clever or it's easy or whatever it was, just because I preferred to do my training not around them, because they were so concerned with not really taking any action or any activity or encouraging people to face problems. It was more mollycoddling and well, we have to stick to this system because that's the way we do it. Why? Why? Who says? Who says? Right? You know, like say my attitude to training. You know, if you lift light weights for high reps, you'll build a lot of hypertrophy and whatnot. If you lift heavy weights for a few reps, you'll build size. So my brain goes, what if I lift heavy weights for lots of reps? What will that do? You know,
you'll explode.
Yeah, that's the kind of way that I look at it.
You'll become
nice
one
deduction. One giant overgrown ab.
One beating ab.
Nice deduction, by the way, on the adult industry. Thank you, sir. Craig, when you realise it isn't about you, everything teaches you something, as you're not as biased as you could be otherwise. Nice. It's a great philosophy on how to work with reading people and that kind of thing. But guys, we've kept you all far too long. Go and live your lives. And
Get out of my house.
come back next week, of course. But go and I don't know, read a book. I don't know, whatever you want. Read a book, watch a cartoon, eat a lollipop. You do you. I'm not bothered.
If you don't come back, we'll find you. It's simple.
Yeah. We have a very particular set of skills that will make us a nuisance for people like you. But that's just popped into my head as well. Like, you know, we did the whole thing a while back of solving all the world's problems, right?
Yeah.
And how do you solve the train strike problem? Pay them what they're worth. How do you solve the doctor's pay them what they're worth? How do you solve the cost of it? Like, do this. There's so many easy answers on the table that could just be explored. Do I know if they're the right ones? No, I don't. But there's so many easy answers that just could be trialed, as opposed to it being a bunch of intellectual dick measuring, which is really all it is.
We don't put the people with those kind of answers in charge. We have a government state with the complete opposite of what we need. Mad, isn't it? Absolute bonkers. England, everybody.
If you're in England, leave. Like, there's all this talk of immigration. Why are you people coming here? Like, not that anyone cares that you're coming. Why? Have you seen England? It's not the safe haven you think it is. It isn't. It's a shithole.
We're saying turn around. We're trying to do you a favour.
Yeah, turn around and we'll get on the boats with you. We'll follow you. Honest. Maybe not. I mean, if you're coming from a war-torn country, then fair enough. But if you're coming from I don't know, some country that's not a war-torn country, then what are you doing?
Hawaii.
Maybe think through your decision. It was the Lenny Henry stand-up in Live at the Apollo. Like, somewhere my dad was on the beaches of Jamaica going, I'm sick of all this bloody sun and sand. You know what I need? Some sleet. I'm moving to Dudley. What are you doing? What are you doing? Right, guys, on that semi-professional note, we're going to love you and leave you. And we'll see you all next time. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.